Good day! Here are the stories for the Manila Times for Thursday, February 4, 2021. The government will proceed with the rollout of Russia's Sputnik V vaccine once the Food and Drug Administration approves it for emergency use, the country's vaccine czar said on Wednesday. Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr., chief implementer of the National Pandemic Action Plan and vaccine czar, gave the assurance after Kirill Dmitriev, chief executive officer of the Russian Direct Investment Fund, said the Philippines would receive its first batch of Sputnik V vaccine in April if the FDA allowed its emergency use. On Tuesday, British medical journal The Lancet published interim clinical analysis from the Sputnik V vaccine trials that showed 91.6% efficacy rate against COVID-19 on almost 20,000 volunteers. The vaccine's efficacy on volunteers aged 60 years old and above was 91.8% and gave full protection against severe cases of COVID-19. Dmitriev said the Philippines would receive its first batch of vaccines by April once it received the FDA authorization. Senator Christopher Lawrence Bongo attended the launch of the 100th Malasakit Center at the Research Institute for Tropical Medicine in Muntinlupa City. This is the 20th Malasakit Center in Metro Manila and the 54th in Luzon. Go, in his speech, recounted his experiences as an aide to then Davao City Mayor, now President Rodrigo Duterte, that led him to find a way to help poor patients. Labor Secretary Silvestre Abella III on Wednesday said his department will review a proposal to provide a wage subsidy to private sector workers heavily affected by the pandemic. Last week, various labor groups such as the Trade Union Congress of the Philippines called on the government to provide workers with wage subsidies amid the economic decline caused primarily by the COVID-19 pandemic. The Department of Labor and Employment estimates that between 1.5 million and 1.7 million workers were affected by the pandemic, while the Philippine Statistics Authority pegged the number at 5 million. Bello said a wage subsidy would help preserve jobs as many companies continue to reel from the effects of the pandemic. A wage hike, he added, could only worsen their economic predicament that could lead to permanent closure and job losses. Chief Presidential Legal Counsel Salvador Panelo on Wednesday said the Duterte administration will continue to promote civil liberties and develop a democratic culture for a more vibrant democracy. He made the statement after the London-based think tank Economic Intelligence Unit, or EIU, ranked the Philippines 55th out of 167 countries in the Global Democracy Index for 2020. The country's ranking dropped by one rung from the 54th ranking it got in 2019. The Department of Health is studying new information on new COVID-19 variants after concerns have been raised on their potential resistance to vaccines. World Health Organization Chief Scientist Dr. Soumya Swaminathan has raised the alarm that the new South African variant, N510Y, may render the vaccines less effective. There were also reports in Brazil that some patients have been infected with more than one variant of COVID-19. According to Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere, the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases Sub-Technical Working Group on New Variants is continuing its studies on these cases abroad. The DOH has not yet recorded any additional case of the new variant after it reported that 17 individuals have been tested for the new and more infectious B117 variant of the virus that came from the United Kingdom. Former Senator John Henry Sonny Osmeña died on Tuesday, his sister, Annie Osmeña Aboitiz, said. The former senator died at 2:45 p.m. The cause of death was not mentioned. Osmeña earned the moniker Lone Ranger during his days as a senator because of his personal advocacy fighting graft and corruption. He authored the bill that created the Department of Energy in 1992 and the Electric Power Crisis Act of 1993, also known as the Build-Operate Law that enabled independent power producers to solve the power crisis in the 1990s, though it later resulted in higher power rates. Holy masses in memory of the late former senator will be conducted via Zoom. The Senate and the House of Representatives on Wednesday ratified a bicameral conference committee report on the proposed Corporate Recovery and Tax Incentives for Enterprises Act, or the CREATE Bill, which seeks to grant incentives to exporters and critical domestic enterprises for up to 17 years. The BICAM report reconciled the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill 1357 and House Bill 4157. Doctors, nurses, and other medical personnel in 4 hospitals in Metro Manila that catered to COVID-19 patients will get inoculated with the initial batch of the Pfizer vaccine this month. Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr., chief implementer of the National Task Force Against COVID-19 and the government's designated vaccine czar, on Wednesday said around 58,000 medical professionals and healthcare workers from the Philippine General Hospital, Jose N. Enriquez Memorial Hospital and Sanitarium, Lung Center of the Philippines, and East Avenue Medical Center would be the beneficiaries of the 117,000 doses of the Pfizer vaccine from the World Health Organization's COVAX facility. He added that the medical frontliners would be inoculated 2 or 3 days after the arrival of the vaccine, which is expected by the 2nd or 3rd week of February. In business, the country's money supply posted slower growth in December last year as the COVID-19 pandemic continues to affect the lending activities of banks, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas reported. In a statement on Wednesday, the central bank said domestic liquidity rose by 9.5% year-on-year to 14.2 trillion pesos in the last month of 2020, weaker than the 10.5% increase in November. Month-on-month and seasonally adjusted, M3 improved by 0.7%. Domestic claims jumped by 4.7% year-on-year in December, but eased from the 6.7% pickup a month ago amid tepid bank lending activity, it added. Topping sports, Kai Sotto is home. The 18-year-old prospect in the National Basketball Association arrived in the Philippines on Tuesday night after spending a year in the United States, playing for the NBA G League team Ignite. He is expected to enter the training bubble in Laguna to prepare for the 2021 FIBA Asia Cup qualifiers in Qatar. Yen Macabenta, Ramon Tulfo, and architect Felino Palafox Jr. are today's front page columnists. Macabenta believes the economy is the key in beating COVID-19. Tulfo honors the late Presidential Anti-Corruption Commission Chief Dante Jimenez, while architect Palafox looks into architecture for transportation. Today's editorial talks about price controls on chicken and pork products as an extreme but necessary intervention. Read the full version on the paper's opinion section or listen to the voice of the Times. For more news and information, get a copy of the Manila Times on print, subscribe to its digital edition, or log on to www.manilatimes.net. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram and keep up with the Times. With the Fort Villa Serran, this is Eric John Sikwa reporting. May you have a safe day ahead.